Breaking news in Viking land. We usually don't do shows unprompted like this. I forgot my headphones at work. The Vikings have made two trades at the deadline that I feel need to be covered. Number one, most importantly, Ezra Cleveland, now a Jacksonville Jaguar. They were making deals with the Jags. It just wasn't Daniil Hunter. It was Ezra Cleveland, who is now a backup guard after the offensive line has looked very competent. Do you have any passionate thoughts about the Ezra Cleveland trade?
No, I think it's interesting considering that he was, at one point considered like a foundational piece of the line, but relatively underperformed the last year and a half. He was fine this year, hadn't allowed too many sacks. However, he was not great last year. Him and Ed Ingram both struggled in pass pro, and with the emergence of Dalton Reisner and the expiring contract that Ezra Cleveland is on, it makes sense.
Yep, and they got a 6th-round pick for that compensation tracker. I should have made a graphic, but I just got in from my day job, so we got a 6th-round pick in the 2025 draft. All of the draft picks mentioned tonight are in this upcoming draft. Now on to the most important trade that was made today. The Vikings send a conditional 6th that could turn into a 7th. Oh, no. The Vikings get Josh Dobbs and a 6th that could turn into a 7th. The Vikings give up a 6th. So I got my wires straight. One more time, just in case you missed it. The Vikings get Joshua Dobbs, the quarterback. He played at Tennessee, drafted to Pittsburgh. Had that really funky, joined the Titans last season on, Thursday night and learned the offense quickly and then played a bad game, but, considering the circumstances, decent. The Vikings also receive a 7th-round pick that could turn into a 6th. I think I said that backwards last time. It's a 7th-round pick right now. It could turn into a 6th if he plays enough. The Vikings give up a 6th. So altogether, the Vikings have acquired a quarterback and 2 draft picks, and they gave away 1 draft pick and a guard. I think the Vikings have done good. I think that these are fine trades. This trade for Dobbs reminds me a lot of the Cam Akers trade, in that you looked at the Cam Akers trade and you said, this almost feels like the Rams just gave him to us so he didn't he wasn't on their team anymore. And that's basically what it was. The Dobbs trade feels similar to that. It's probably, we'll talk about what we think is going to happen the rest of the season, briefly, and who's going to play quarterback. I don't know that pick turns into a 6th-round pick. So I think the Vikings are just going to basically get a 7th-round pick out of this, because I do think Jaron Hall is going to start the rest of the season, because I believe in my man. But, Will, I've talked for too long now. I've broken down the details of all the trades. What do you think of the Josh Dobbs trade?
At this point, I have a similar sentiment to what you just said. I would like to see Jaron Hall play. Plain and simple. I think, I think what we've seen from Josh Dobbs in the last basically 2/3 of a season is that he is a competent quarterback. He's incredibly intelligent. I believe, like you said, he came in late season last year off the couch, learned a playbook quickly for Cleveland, and
it was Tennessee.
It was Tennessee. You're correct.
Yes.
Yeah, for Tennessee, and just held them afloat with their sort of falling apart season there at the end. Gave them a shot to make the playoffs if they would have won week 18. So he is someone that I think if you throw him into an offense and he absolutely has to play, let's say week 10, I don't think he's going to play this week. He could. I mean, like I just mentioned, he's very intelligent. He can learn things quickly, but I would be shocked if he plays, at least starts week 9 in Atlanta. But yeah, he's someone who can learn things quickly and has shown a competence definitely for playing the quarterback position. And now, if this was a trade that the Vikings had to give up more draft capital for, I would have been a lot more iffy on it. But basically, what it amounted to was a pick swap.
Yeah.
You're really not giving up much of anything. And at the very least, you have a more than competent backup. You're not just going and signing some XFL guy to be a third quarterback or to put somebody on the practice squad. So, because at this point, the Vikings quarterback room was pretty dire. It was Jaron Hall, an injured Nick Mullins, and Sean Mannion. That was it.
Who is just a quarterback's coach. Let's call it what it is. He is a QB coach that is on the practice squad because everyone poops on Aaron Rodgers because he gets Randall Cobb and whoever New York's backup is now, like Tim Boyle. He got them jobs because he was like, yeah, they're my buddies. Sean Mannion is on the Vikings practice squad because Kirk Cousins likes him and likes having him in meetings. Also, I want to point out, let's say that Josh Dobbs doesn't take a snap for the Vikings. Let's say Jaron Hall plays well, manages the game on Sunday, oh my gosh, I'm stuttering bad, against Atlanta, and he's the starter the rest of the season, and he does all right, and the Vikings win 9 or 10 games. So yeah, the Vikings are moving from having like the 24th or 25th pick in the draft to in the 6th round. So the 25th pick of the 6th round, they've given that pick away, and they will now get what might be the 1st or 2nd pick of the 7th round. So we're talking about moving down,
8-10 spots.
Yeah, 8 to 10 spots. And these are guys that you don't expect to get great value out of. You look at the history of 6th and 7th round picks, it's not exactly littered with all pros and superstars. There's a lot of guys that are driving UPS trucks right now. So I love the trade. I think it's great. This is my theory. I'm going to give my theory, and then I'll let you give your thoughts on what the Vikings are going to do the rest of the season. My theory is the plan is that Jaron Hall plays every game for the rest of the season. He is the starter now. They are going to almost a win-win, try and spin a positive out of the Cousins injury, which I know is a sin to do because he was playing so well. And I still stand by extend Cousins. I tweeted that out. I think that is the best scenario moving forward. But let's see what Jaron Hall has. If Jaron Hall looks all right, cool. We can still look at extending Cousins to a 1 or 2 year deal, but the Vikings have a little bit of leverage in this situation where if they can't get a deal done with Cousins and he wants to go play for Atlanta and Atlanta wants to shill out a huge amount of money for him, the Vikings are fine. They have Jaron Hall all as well. If Jaron Hall is really bad, the Vikings pick in the top 10, you try to extend Cousins, and if he doesn't want to extend, you have some leverage where you can say, okay, well, we have a top 10 draft pick, we will go draft the quarterback of the future, and we'll start over with a new quarterback. The best case scenario, in my opinion, is Jaron Hall looks competent as a game manager, Cousins gets extended for 3 more years, let's call it. He ends up being the Vikings quarterback until he retires. He balls out. He comes back in August off of the Achilles injury. He balls out, wins the Super Bowl. Everything's good, great, going, wonderful. My theory is Josh Dobbs, it has a much similar play style to what Jaron Hall will bring to the table than what Nick Mullins would. And so the offense is going to undergo changes in the next few weeks to accommodate to less arm talent, less decision-making, and more athletic ability, rollouts, QB runs, and that kind of an offense. And Nick Mullins is not going to operate well in that kind of an offense that requires athleticism to operate. Whereas Jaron Hall and now Josh Dobbs can. So I think Josh Dobbs is going to actually be the true backup. Nick Mullins, we don't even know if his back is going to be ready. We don't know when he's going to be eligible to come off of IR. But then Nick Mullins turns into emergency third quarterback for the Vikings. That's if everything goes well. Jaron Hall might suck on Sunday, and we might be talking about Josh Dobbs playing against the Saints. And Josh Dobbs might suck on that Sunday, and then we might be talking about Nick Mullins, and the Vikings could be in for a long rest of the season. Will, I want to get your opinion quickly because I don't want to go too long tonight. What do you think happens with the quarterback room now that this trade has happened?
Just one quick thing to get out of the way, just because some people might be thinking this. The Vikings acquired a quarterback with the first name of Josh
Oh
about 13
no.
years ago on the trade deadline, and it did not go well. So let's hope that Josh Dobbs does not become Josh Freeman. Okay, so now that that's out of the way,
I forgot about that.
I think I agree with the plan, because thinking about it in terms of a plan, the Vikings' plan in the short term is to make the playoffs this season. They clearly are not throwing the season away. They are not tanking it. They did not trade Danielle Hunter. They did not go any sort of fire sale. And if you listen to any of the team's press conferences over the weekend, this is clearly their objective. They are trying to win this season. I don't think, they have this delusion that Jaren Hall is going to win them a Super Bowl. But I think what they do understand and what they are going for and what they are planning on doing is competing to the highest of their ability. They believe that they're a team that is still rising in terms of a collective team. And so they need someone who can not let the offense completely fall on its face for the last 9 weeks. They're trying to make the playoffs. It's very clear.
Yeah.
So I think what they would like you're saying, I think the plan would be, okay, Jaren Hall, we drafted you this year. We spent a 5th round draft pick on you. The plan would be, let's see what we can get out of you. Now, like you're saying, if it goes poorly this first week against Atlanta, and even if they win, but especially if they lose, I would be not surprised at all if Dobbs played week 10 against the Saints. Now, one thing that I think needs to be said that we haven't really talked about is, I think it's pretty clear that today Joshua Dobbs is a better NFL quarterback than Jaren Hall.
Yes.
I don't think too many people would argue that point. And the reason why that might seem in contradiction to what we're saying that Jaren Hall should play is Jaren Hall's been in the system, and he's been eating and breathing and drinking this system for, I don't know, 3 months now, plus all the
since
stuff.
April.
Exactly. He got a playbook, and he's been sleeping with it ever since. And so the familiarity is just way more there for Hall than it is for Dobbs at this point. Now, Dobbs is smart. He'll learn the playbook pretty quickly. And to your point about the, similarity in play style between Dobbs and Hall, I think it's a really good one, because even if Hall does take the starting role on Sunday, keeps it through the rest of the season, Dobbs is going to be a great simulation of that as a backup, so that just say Hall gets injured or something, he's not playing well, throwing him in there, it just keeps the offense going as it was before.
Yep.
And you're not reverting back to a Kirk Cousins offense with Nick Mullins operating it at a lesser clip. So, because your point is right, Dobbs and Hall are not going to be making the types of throws that we saw Kirk Cousins make, especially over the last 2-3 weeks. They're going to bring something completely different at the table. So I believe that this was, more than anything, a very strong depth move, and the plan is to let their rookie play. But ultimately, they're going to give themselves the best chance to make the postseason. And if that means throwing Dobbs into the mix, I think they'll do it.
Okay, final thing, and then we will leave, because we both have children, and it is trick or treat tonight. I'm going to answer this question first, and then I will let you do final thoughts. Follow the show at LTB Vikings and subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that stuff. The question is, what would you have done differently, if anything, at the trade deadline? And my answer is, I would not have made the Dobbs deal, but I would have went for Dexter Lawrence from the Giants, who ended up going to Seattle. And I would have rather had Dexter Lawrence come to Minnesota. I would have tried to strengthen the defense and said, we're going to trust the 2 guys, 3 guys if you count Sean Mannion, but if Sean Mannion sees the field, we're cooked. We might be cooked either way. But I would have trusted Hall, Earl Mullins, or some strange Frankenstein abomination of the 2 to get the Vikings to the playoffs, and I would have leaned heavily on a very well coached and improved defense, and I would have tried to strengthen that area of the team rather than go out and get Josh Dobbs. Now, who knows? Maybe they did call about Dexter Lawrence, and the Giants hate the Vikings because we made them pay Daniel Jones. Maybe there's bad blood there or something. But I would have rather have seen us upgrade the defense, and even if that means sending a second-round pick a la the TJ Hawkinson trade, that's what I wanted to see happen. That did not happen. I'm not mad at the trade. Like I said, it almost feels like a free, here, just have Josh Dobbs. And cool, I'll take Josh Dobbs. I like how he fits as Jaron Hall's backup more than I do Nick Mullins, because Nick Mullins is just like a bad version of Cousins, whereas Josh Dobbs and Jaron Hall, I think, are going to be very comparable in their play styles. So that's my answer. We'll see you guys later this week. Oh, I'm going to let you answer this, but later this week we will talk about Green Bay and the upcoming game against Atlanta and what we expect in that. But the question posed to you for final thoughts on this brief emergency load the box, what would you have done differently?
It's a good question, and given the lack of information that we have right now, I'm not sure I would have done much differently. Partly because I think Nick, and when I say lack of information, I mean more pertaining to Nick Mullins and his back. Because for all we know, Nick Mullins, who has a back injury and has been on injured reserve now for a few weeks, it might be worse than they're letting on. Back injuries, as we saw with Garrett Bradbury last year, are buggers, and they can really hinder your ability to play the quarterback, to play any position, frankly, a sport where you're getting hit all the time. And I'm assuming the Vikings didn't want to take a risk with having, Sean Mannion be next man up. And so I think getting a quarterback was almost required in some sense. You had to replace Kirk Cousins with somebody, and it was either going to be someone like Joshua Dobbs or it was going to be somebody off the street like Colt McCoy. So I'm okay with the move. Like you said, it's sort of a wash. They got a 6th round pick back from the Jaguars. They gave away a 6th round pick, so that's sort of a wash right there. And then you get a quarterback and a 7th round pick. You're basically gaining a pick for free. If you, I don't know if you do all the math on
Ezra
it.
Cleveland, because you do,
yeah.
But I guess you could think of it as like Ezra Cleveland for Josh Dobbs, and then you get a pick. And so I think Kwesi did good considering the circumstances he was thrown into, less than 48 hours ago, or maybe just over.
That's the other point too. That's crazy about this is it was, Vikings on the rise, Vikings at 500, they're in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden their MVP level quarterback, and that's not hyperbole, was injured and out for the season. So I think, like you're saying, I think bolstering the defense is not a bad idea. However, what I would say about the defense and just bolstering the roster in general, the defense is playing outstanding lately. So do you want to mess with that? Bringing in someone like Dexter Lawrence is that should help. But the other thing about that is there's almost has to be a little bit of like hedging with this season. Like, yes, we want to compete. Yes, we think we're a good enough team to make the postseason. But how much should we give up for a team that no longer has its starting quarterback? And so how much should we really put our chips in and go get someone like Dexter Lawrence? So I understand the hedging and sort of the risk-averse approach that Kwesi took with this trade deadline. It doesn't seem like he did a whole lot that was too risky. So I can appreciate his perspective, even though, getting someone that would make the defense better wouldn't have been a bad idea.
Specifically, someone that you could extend is kind of my thought process. I didn't want to go out and get like Justin Houston on his last, goodbye
breath.
toe. Yeah, like I didn't want to trade for somebody that was like it's a 1-year rental. I wanted to get somebody that maybe you extend into the future and fix it that way. Basically the TJ Hawkinson trade.
Yeah.
But for the defense. I don't think it's possible, but I like the idea, and this is my second final thoughts now. We'll see how many I get into tonight, but I do like to think of it like, it's $100 buy-in game of Poco. And so you have $100 that you're playing with. The Vikings have just drawn such a bad hand with your quarterback popping his Achilles on Sunday. And so Kwesi, has seen the way the cards are falling, and he says, man, I could still maybe win this hand. Let's raise $1. Like, let's not go all in on this season. Well, 500. Let's just put $1 in and see.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get something back. Maybe we make the playoffs. Something crazy happens, and Josh Dobbs, gets a statue built.
You never know. Stranger things have happened. The last thing I'll say is I think, the sort of no cost move to get Josh Dobbs makes a lot more sense than a higher cost move to get someone like Jameis Winston.
Agreed.
So I think the approach taken was probably the right approach, although it was not very sexy or very, exciting. I think for where this team's at, the hopes and the, now diminished expectations is probably the right approach.
Yeah, I think we're happy, and I think we can leave with a skull y'all on that, don't you?
All right. We'll see you guys later this week. Skull y'all.